The Panama Canal keeps receiving bad news.
A historic drought at one of the world's largest trading routes.
The wait time to get through, now up to 3 weeks.
It is undersized, too expensive, and wait times are getting frankly ridiculous.
And we see ship after ship just waiting.
Last year, Mexico finished construction of an interoceanic railway that's marketed as a faster and cheaper alternative. Plans for building similar railways through Honduras and Colombia are now gaining momentum, and there have even been talks of a rival canal for Nicaragua. The United States is by far the canal's biggest user, and they count on this waterway to connect to their Pacific fleet, making it even more worrisome that China is establishing a strategic presence. They already own 2 out of the 5 main ports, and they are working on a third. Near all these alternative routes, they're buying port facilities and supporting industries, and in some cases they're even building the railroads themselves. Can these routes actually rival the Panama Canal? How is China establishing a presence here, and what does this mean for US dominance in the Western Hemisphere? This is how China is buying the rivals of the Panama Canal. With Hindsight. So we've actually been working on this video for a couple of months already, and that's because we kept writing it and rewriting it and perfecting it. And the reason why we can spend so much attention to detail to this particular video is because of today's sponsor, Odoo. Odoo is an all-in-one management software. They provide a range of applications to simplify the day-to-day management of your business. The first application is for free, and if you want to use 2 or more applications, you can change to the paid plan. I would like to try out the website application. Odoo guides you through a few simple steps to select your goals, color palette, and to add the pages that you want. They have several themes that you can choose from as a starting point, and that's when the fun starts. One of the great benefits of Odoo is that they offer you a free personalized domain name for 1 year. Their site builder is very intuitive and no technical skills are required. You simply drag and drop blocks and customize them in the sidebar if necessary. And even on the free plan, you get unlimited hosting and support. If you want to give it a try yourself, you can find the link in the pinned comment or in the description below. And you can claim your first application 100% for free. And now, back to the video. The Panama Canal has played a vital role in global trade ever since its opening in 1914 as one of the world's shipping choke points. And when such a choke point gets disrupted, it has far-reaching consequences, like in 2021, when a grounded container ship blocked the Suez Canal and about $9.6 billion of trade was held up each day. The Panama Canal is extremely vulnerable to droughts, and during periods of little rainfall, the number of ships that's allowed to transit is lowered. During some months of last year, the number of ships that was allowed to transit was more than 50% lower. Shipping companies, who pay on average about $100,000 to transit the canal, were faced with a dilemma. Either risk waiting for days or weeks, or take a longer route and pay $20,000 to $30,000 per day on fuel. The United States, with over 200 million long tons of cargo per year, is by far the biggest user of the canal. China, with 64 million, comes in second. China wants to protect its strategic and economic interests. And in 1999, they made their opening move. They signed a long-term contract to manage port facilities at both ends of the canal. 2 out of the 5 main ports were now controlled by China. On the Pacific side, this port serves as a hub to transfer cargo from large ships onto smaller vessels. And their port on the Atlantic side is much smaller and has facilities for cruise ships. But 90% of the port services here are provided by the 2 other ports. But this was just the start. In 2016, China-based Landbridge Group acquired control of Margarita Island for $1 billion, starting construction on a new deep-water port for mega-ships. Then Panama made a surprise turnaround. Panama cut ties with Taiwan in favor of China, and they became the first country in Latin America to join China's Belt and Road Initiative.
La República de Panamá carecía de relaciones diplomáticas con la República Popular de China, un estado que por sí solo representa el 20% de la población mundial.
Construction on the port started just a week later, and Panama announced that a consortium of Chinese state-owned companies was going to build the fourth bridge over the Panama Canal. Today, nearly 40 Chinese multinationals from different sectors have set their headquarters in Panama. It took them only about 2 decades to achieve all of this. The Panama Canal is owned and operated by the Panamanian government. All countries are guaranteed to have fair access, and only Panama may maintain military installations. But the United States has the right to use military force in defense of the canal's neutrality. But then, China's winning streak was cut short. There was a growing pushback from the United States and from the Panamanian people, which ultimately led to the government's decision to scale back and cancel some of China's plans. But China is playing the long game. More than any other country in the world, they are searching for alternative commercial routes. They have led official expeditions through all Arctic shipping passages, something that no other country has done. And in Central America, they are the main foreign investor in routes that could rival the Panama Canal. So the first rival of the Panama Canal that we're going to discuss is a canal through Mexico, and I want to show you guys something. So last week, as I was rewriting this story, in the evening, I went shopping and I found this map. So what you're looking at here is, this is a map of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. So we have the Atlantic Ocean here, and we have the Pacific Ocean over here. So this is an original map from 1829, and it was commissioned by the French. And what they wanted to find out is if it was possible to build a canal through the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. So here in Veracruz, you can see a lot of rivers, and here, once you reach Oaxaca, there's almost none. So they commissioned this study, and they discovered that it was not that possible to build a canal here. And a few decades later, they commenced working on the Panama Canal. A canal through Mexico was never built, but a railway through the Isthmus of Tehuantepec has existed since the days of Porfirio Díaz. Prior to the Panama Canal, this railway was used to transport hundreds of thousands of tons of sugar from Hawaii to the United States West Coast. And this led to an economic boom for Mexico. But the railway lost business when the Panama Canal opened a few years later, and over the years, it was very poorly maintained. Mexico's president, López Obrador, in 2020 started rebuilding the line, and in late 2023, it was reopened for operations. The railway runs from the port city of Salina Cruz on the Pacific side to Coatzacoalcos on the Caribbean side, and has the capacity to transport 1.4 million containers each year. This turned the region into a strategic asset for global trade, and both the US and China began investing in supporting infrastructure. The Chinese helped modernize the Salina Cruz port and built new railroads in the region. But in Honduras, they took it even further. They invested billions in the acquisition of 2 ports. Puerto Cortés on the Caribbean side is already the busiest port in Central America by volume. And there are now high-level talks between the governments of China and Honduras to build a connecting railroad. The construction would be completed in 10 to 15 years and would have the capacity to transport 3.6 million containers each year. In Colombia, China proposed building another railroad from the deep waters near Copica through the dense jungle up to Urabá on the Caribbean coast. This railroad would primarily serve to transport coal, but it would be capable of moving 300,000 containers per year between oceans. China is eagerly investing in all these projects, either directly in its construction or in supporting infrastructure and industries that service these lines. But even if you add up Mexico's 1.4 million, Honduras's 3.6 million, and Colombia's 300,000, these rivals would not even come close to the capacity of the Panama Canal, which last year was used to transport well over 8 million containers. And that's even before mentioning the existing transport infrastructure that already exists in Panama. But these routes should be seen as complementary rather than competitive. And for some ships that are waiting for days or weeks to transit the Panama Canal, these might just be other routes that they can take into consideration. The only plan that could actually outcompete Panama would be a canal for Nicaragua. The idea is to build 2 locks, each with 3 consecutive chambers on each side of the country. These would be used to raise the ship to the country's large freshwater lake. These plans have existed for decades, but in 2014, the government of Nicaragua announced that they had found an investor. President Ortega signed an agreement with a company from Hong Kong to finance and build the canal. The face of this project was Wang Jing, a mysterious Chinese businessman who was considered to be one of China's richest people. But much is unknown about how he amassed this fortune. The proposed size of the canal is about 3 times larger and much wider than the Panama Canal. And it would require excavating hundreds of millions of cubic meters of dirt and placing hundreds of cubic meters of concrete. Meanwhile, Ortega was cozying up to Iran, Venezuela, and Russia, and he openly promoted the canal as an option against US dominance over global trade. But after months of official acts and ceremonies, deals and meetings, the Chinese billionaire Wang Jing suddenly lost nearly his entire fortune and disappeared. And as quickly as it started, the hopes of building this canal faded away. China has well-documented intentions to secure its grip on global trade, and the choke points that connect the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans are of strategic importance to have dominance in the Western Hemisphere. The Panama Canal will likely continue to suffer periodic droughts, and its transit capacity will occasionally lower. This heightens interest in alternative routes, which are unlikely to outcompete Panama, but they can take on some of the traffic. Meanwhile, China is creeping into strategic position, but they're also facing the harsh realities of Latin America, which go beyond the hardship of building through rainforest. Amongst them are corruption, political instability, the presence of armed gangs, opposition from environmental groups, and a general wariness of Chinese influence. But they have time, and they are making progress. If you like our content and want to learn more about geopolitics, consider watching one of these 2 videos next.